I'm really passionate about parenting both ages. You have to parent the physical age and the emotional age. And it's work. This is where the work is. But that is ultimately what will keep our kids safe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Players Connection, your podcast that connects parents of autistic children with industry experts and proven results. I am your host, Brad Broyles, and I'm here with my colorful Monday co-host, Nathan Palmer.
Brad, thank you for that. And so you give me these little surnames every time we do a podcast. That's got to be my favorite because our guest has a book about colorful Mondays that when I saw it, it's like I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was autism focused. And so I can't wait to dive in on that one specifically, to be honest.
I am too. I am so excited for everybody to listen to our amazing guest, Carrie Cariello. Is that right? I think I butchered that. I think I totally butchered that. Okay, I am so sorry. Cariello. Thank you.
Man.
No N's or S.
That is awful. I am awful. Well, that's okay. You know, Carrie, thank you. And she's an Amazon best-selling author. Welcome to the podcast, Carrie.
Thank you. It is great to be here, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yeah, Carrie, you've written some awesome books. One's called Someone I'm With Has Autism.
Yep.
You know, What Color is Monday? And then you have a new collaboration book out called Autism Out Loud.
I do.
Is that right?
I do. I wrote that with two other really well-known bloggers, Kate Swenson and Adrienne Wood. And that one, we were so excited that it hit the Times upon immediate release last April. So it didn't hurt that autism sort of surged to the forefront of the political landscape at literally the day we released our book. So.
Wow.
It's
kind of good and bad timing, right?
Yeah.
Good. Well, good. And it shows awareness and if nothing else, influence. I still laugh at the title, What Color is Monday? Because it just screams spectrum, and I love it. So those three books, there's so much out there in the way of autism resources now, which is fantastic. When my child was diagnosed, it was still a not well-known area. And that's from a service provider level to even just general societal awareness. So I love that there are people like you spreading and championshiping, that message. But if you could kind of give us a run up of those three books, like what are they about? What are the content areas? So that our parents, if they want to check them out, have an idea of what they can expect.
Yeah, I would love that. So What Color is Monday channels the journey from diagnosis day all the way until when Jack is 8 years old. And the title really, people love the title, which cracks me up. My friend came up with it kind of out of the blue. Jack always saw the days of the week in terms of color. And I've been asked a lot if that's consistent with a sort of condition known as synesthesia, where people assign color to numbers or color to certain flavors or colors to sound. And it's not, because people who have that, their colors are very, very consistent, where Jack's can kind of waver ever since he was little. So I wanted to call the book Thursday is Purple. And my friend said, no, call it What Color is Monday? And it just really stuck. And so that kind of chronicles us as a young family. So my husband and I have 5 kids. They were all born about a year apart, and Jack was diagnosed when he was 14 months old. And the impetus for that, which I share in the book, is we were in a hotel lobby when Jack was a really little boy, and Jack at the time was terrified of dogs, absolutely terrified. And we walked into the lobby of the hotel that we'd been there before. It had since become pet friendly, and there was a man there with his dog. And Jack, of course, my husband had gone out to get the luggage. So I was like on my own with these 5 jokers. And all my kids started to get really squirrely. And Jack started to do what he did at the time, which was pace the perimeter of the room and kind of trace the walls with his fingers when he was really deregulated. And the kids were like, Mom, a dog, you got to get him out of here. Get Jack out of here. And I will never forget that the man, I went over to the gentleman. I said, my son is just terrified of dogs. So that's what all this hubbub is about. And he sat down on the floor and he said, Jack, we're waiting for you. My dog's name is Gracie, and we're just waiting for you. And it was so gentle. I mean, I'd still get emotional so many years later. Over and over, we're waiting for you. We're just here waiting for you. And Jack circled and circled closer and closer to the man, and he eventually reached out and touched the man's hair. And then for the first time in his life, he pet the dog. And wow. I remember riding up in the elevator thinking, like, this is the stuff I want people to know. This is the lens I want people to view advocacy and autism and my family and my son. These really mini triumphs that I think are often overlooked by many, but for us are tremendous. And so that was the jumping off point for What Color is Monday.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny. It reminds me of this joke that I read from Will Ferrell about trying to understand women, which in some way parallels autism because they're both mysterious conditions in my mind.
Lovable.
He says, trying to understand women is like trying to smell the color 9, which makes about as much sense as What Color is Monday. But I just laugh every time I think about it. And I love your example of the hotel because, we all have these experiences about connection. And I wish more people understood at the end of the day, that connection, that principle of creating safety, allows these kids to have different levels of experience. One of our director of behavior services, she tells a story about a day she was at a grocery store with her son, and in the middle of an aisle, because they did things in the wrong order, he just had a meltdown. And she describes this experience of, and when we say meltdown, your parents go, yeah, well, that happens all the time. No, this was an immovable, full body shutdown, nervous system takeover meltdown where he was on the floor for almost an hour. And she explains this time where people were just giving her dirty looks and just basically telling her she's a bad mom. Yeah. And she had, from other experiences, she had these cards that basically just said, my child has autism, thank you for your patience, or something to that effect. And so instead of even saying anything because she's triggered herself and she can't relate, she hands this card, and she says afterwards one of these people came up and really apologized and just had this grace and this just connection that's what it's about. If we can, on some level, just find that safety connection point, just magical things happen.
So, one of the best things I learned when it comes to a meltdown versus a tantrum, this was so helpful for me, is a meltdown is a response to the environment. Something's too bright, too loud, too scratchy. A tantrum has a goal. So a tantrum is, I want to leave this store, I want another cookie, I want more screen time, I want to stay at the playground. And once you really dial into the difference, you can address which needs are presenting themselves. And I'm specific about that because we do get so much backlash. Like, every kid has a meltdown. Oh, my kid had a meltdown too. It's nuanced, but it's definitely different.
I love that. So meltdown has to deal with more with the environment. Yes. A tantrum, I want something.
I want something. Yeah.
That's really good for our parents. That's an awesome.
No, I love that. We've had a couple of themes on here where we talk about the brain response versus the nervous system response, and they're two different systems, right? So meltdown is more nervous related, where your body's taking over, versus tantrum, your brain is taking over, and it can be directed, and it has goals and purpose, and it's communicative behavior versus the body just telling you, I'm dysregulated and I'm dysfunctional at the moment.
100%. And a tantrum, you can really prime the brain. You can do a yes when. Yes, we can leave the store when we check out. Yes, you can have another cookie when dinner is over. A meltdown is all about removing the stimulus. And I always say kids like our sons can only match the highest regulatory system in the room, which is tough for parents. I married an Italian man who runs at a 12, and I would say that if he was sitting right next to me. He comes in hot.
And I butchered his last name. I'm sorry.
Oh, he will love that. Don't be silly. So he comes in hot. He's just always. We're better at a 6. That's what I tell him all the time. We are better at a 6, but he comes in at a 12, and he tends to stay at a 12. And that is a whole other conversation about marriage, because my next book due out in a couple of weeks is about marriage and kind of pulls back the curtain to what the things we struggled with. We've been married 27 years now.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yes. I fought for every day of it. I'm just kidding. But I say, MOM, mom, I became the manager of moods. And I always wanted everybody to stay sort of level because that would keep Jack level. And that's not always a realistic expectation for your partner or even yourself. And the truth is, growth is disruptive. And kids like Jack have to learn how to sit with elevated nervous systems and be able to bring themselves back down. But when they're young, or when they're going through puberty, or when they're triggered, that's when they're most susceptible to kind of elevating all on their own.
Well, let me ask you a question. Since you have I'm thinking about a stereotypical Italian husband in a way.
Yeah.
Sometimes
is there such thing as a stereotypical Italian?
Yeah, I guess there are.
Are they all classified?
They're all classified.
Non-stereotypical.
But I've noticed that moms kind of are a little bit more sensitive, or at least they see their child as like, hey, I need some extra support or behavior. To where sometimes a man's like, hey, he'll get over it, toughen up. They don't really, they're a little bit, I guess they push back of trying to figure out the different moods, or how can I connect better with my kiddo? How do you do that in a marriage? Like, how do you work with your partner to say, hey, let's try to get on the same level? That's got to be a little bit, how would you navigate that?
It's very hard. I have a whole chapter about different parenting styles, but I actually would take a 360-degree view that most people don't expect. So one of the biggest questions I field is, how did you make sure all your kids got enough attention? Because there's 5 of them and they're very close together, and then we have Jack. And my out-of-the-box answer is, worry less about the attention your kids get and more about the attention your marriage gets. Only you and your partner can sustain your relationship. Your kids will get feedback from siblings, grandparents, neighbors, teachers, a whole host of other people that will keep them sort of moving. Only you can do that for your marriage. And it took me many, many years to realize how much Joe, my husband Joe, brings to the table. And you described it exactly, Brad. Like, he's kind of the, okay, he'll work through this, and I'm the soother. We've always played those two parts, particularly with Jack. I think it's really important to acknowledge that your way isn't the only way. And Joe stretched Jack in ways I never, ever imagined. If our other kids were up on the roof hanging Christmas lights, Jack was going up on that roof to hang Christmas lights. If it was time, Jack doesn't drive, but he always wanted to learn how to pump gas. Here in New Hampshire, you pump your own gas. And Joe saw no problem with letting him do that, where I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Yes. Joe's the one that took him to the bank every Saturday morning. And showed him how to sign a deposit slip when he started to work as a dishwasher, showed him how to check his balance and his account. We really, over time, filled in each other's gaps.
That's awesome.
And I think we are not special in that regard. I think most couples do that, but most couples have a hard time seeing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that focus on only you can really give to your relationship, because it's so easy, not just in parenting, but particularly special needs parenting. It's so easy to take on that job and role where you say, hey, I'm just sacrificing all things else for this hands-on, emergency at first, and then this lifestyle change. And it does take a conscious shift. So I like that you've got that perspective, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I always say be married on purpose. We do everything else on purpose. We do this podcast on purpose. We're ordering pizza on purpose. We go to the gym on purpose. Be married on purpose in whatever way that looks like for you.
Well, and I love, again, like Nathan said, and like you're saying, like, yes, we were working with our son, but we got to work on our marriage almost first. That takes a high priority. And then we can help with like Jack or Nate or whatnot. Yeah. I love it.
Now, I think I interjected when you were explaining your books, and I apologize, but it's been a wonderful tangent. So we were talking about the content of the books. So What Color is Monday is like that, diagnosis through 8. What about the other book? And we've talked about your new relationship book. Thank you for letting us know about that. We'll have our parents watch for it, because that's one that, frankly, I'd like to read. What about the other two? The Someone I'm With Has Autism and Autism Out Loud. What's the content there, and what's the message?
Well, you touched on, it's so funny you said earlier about the business card in the grocery store, because that's where Someone I'm With Has Autism came about. I've been blogging for 14 years now, every Monday. I've never missed a Monday, and I've never had a guest post. So every Monday is a new blog post, which is kind of like a look in real time into our life. And Someone I'm With Has Autism is a collection of those blog posts, of all the earlier ones. But again, the jumping off point was, I was a young mom at the time. It was difficult to explain Jack in the moment. So I wound up having these little cards made that said, someone I'm with has autism, for when I couldn't jump out of his situation and jump into another person's experience. But it backfired on me, because the first time I gave it to somebody, like in a CVS, they were like, if you can't see me audio wise, I'm squinting at a card. And she's going, but who here has autism? I'm like,
well, maybe you inspired this mom. I'm going to have to ask her now, because that story obviously has gotten out there.
Yeah.
And again, I apologize. I'm going to go on a tangent again, because you jumped in an area I've been meaning to ask you about, and that's your blog. So I see it again. I see a lot of content, and in our digital world, there's no shortage of content. And I see content creators out there that are just pushing generalized content. And when I was looking into your background, Carrie, I come across this blog, and it's this it's almost like it's a journal. It's a public journal, right? It's this chronicle of all these things, and they're real. I mean, I've read a lot of them, and I'm just impressed at the level of connection I have as a parent, seeing it and relating with some of the stories. But I have one specifically that I'd like to ask you about. It's a more recent one, so I'm not going to pull one from like 4 years back and expect you to remember, although you probably would anyways, because these things stay with us. You talked about a different kind of grief, and this idea of how pain pushes and vision pulls. Do you remember that one? Mm-hmm. Could you speak to that a little bit? Because I love the message that you shared in that one. It's just very touching.
Thank you. I do remember that one. So that is a quote, and I'm going to remember the name by the time we get off of who it is.
No problem.
So,
For now, we're going to attribute it to you. It's fine.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I always talk about grief when it comes to autism, because the sad news I have for parents behind us in the journey is I don't think it ever quite evaporates. I think it mutates and it changes, and I kind of compare it to like heartbreak by 1,000 paper cuts, right? The grief isn't enough to make us stop what we're doing in our day, but it just stings a little bit. Jack's 21 now, and I still experience it even when I drive through town and I see like a cluster of kids his age playing basketball, and think how easy they are together, how easy they move their bodies. And I have sort of that sting. My third son is a baseball player in college, and he always says to me, Charlie's his name. A lot of people are familiar with him. He's 20, and he says, why wasn't I born Jack size? 6'6".
6'6".
I'd be in the major leagues.
Wonderful tight end size,
I took Jack to one of Charlie's games last year, and Jack is still very, one of his chief vulnerabilities is boundaries. So he's like sort of looming over the bullpen, not where he's supposed to be at all. And one of Charlie's teammates says, who is that? The coach said, who is this kid? And Charlie said, that's my brother. And if I was born like him, you wouldn't even know my name, or I wouldn't even know your name, because I would be on to bigger and better things. So a bit tangential, but I think autism is a family diagnosis, and we all continually to experience it in our own different ways in our little family here. What I meant about the pain pushing and the vision pulls is kind of interesting. I had tied that blog post into another sort of complicated relationship in my world, and that is my mother. My mother passed about 3 years ago, and we were estranged from one another for over a decade. And I didn't really start to share about that until she passed. And then I got hundreds and hundreds of messages saying, I'm estranged from my father. I'm estranged from my brother. I haven't talked to my mother in years. And she had some very specific vulnerabilities that resembled Jack's. Deep anxiety, deep paranoia, kind of a sense of righteousness, a tendency to police other people. It kind of showed back up in him. And watching her struggle, especially at the end, kind of recommitted me, not that I wasn't already, but to my dedication to making sure that Jack, in always possible, all the ways he could, will live a full life, whether that's medication to smooth the edges of anxiety or continued therapies to make sure that he understands how he looks and sounds in the world. And the ultimate pain pushes is when my mother passed away, I had received a small sum of money that I didn't really feel I deserved given my disconnect with her. And so I was sort of grappling with that pain. And then an opportunity came up to buy Jack a space in this supported living community of his own. And I wound up using the money that I received for that. And to me, that was the ultimate example that pain was pushing me, and then a vision pulled me forward. And so that's what that blog post was about.
I love it. It's funny because, and Brad will tell you, so my background before this wonderful world of autism education was I was a contract attorney, real estate developer, and
you can't tell that he was an attorney. Right?
I'm a recovering attorney. I'm an autism dad first, so I hung up as many other hats as I could. But we joked this, early on. A lot of the projects that we'd done before, I always felt like I had to push along. And it's a little bit different application of your idea here, but still some similar principles because there's pain associated with pushing. Like I had to really push to get things across the finish line. This has been something that has just pulled us, and we're just running to keep up. And it's to your point, that idea of vision, and it's kind of how we know when we're going in the right direction. It's just pulling us along, and there's just so much good out there being done. So no, I appreciate your insights there.
No, and it's and kind of like you, Carrie. It sounds like you have 100 plus followers on your social media accounts.
More than 100.
Well, I saw that on Facebook and on Instagram. You have quite a bit. What do you contribute your success for? What was it? What do you contribute? Like, hey, you're making a big impact in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, why is that? I mean, I can tell, but I just want to know from you. Like, what do you think that it is?
It is interesting. I've been doing this for a long time, and I think it has to be more than the numbers. It has to be more than, I have between my platforms probably about 160,000 followers. And it has to be more than that, and more than likes, and more than how many people shared me. And I think I hope what people value from our story is twofold. They can see a piece of themselves inside of it. Because I think, yes, we're talking about autism today, but you've already brought up so many universal themes that stand outside of autism's box. Grief, marriage, estrangement, messy families, growth is disruptive. All of that sort of transfers to all different parts of our lives. And I think people can reach into our story and pull out what works for them. And I think, early on, much to my husband's dismay, but now he's so used to it, is I live my life out loud. I can only tell the unshiny parts of our story as well as the shiny parts of our story. And I think vulnerability and authenticity is something that's, overlooked a lot on social media. And I've always been true to myself in that respect.
Yeah, and that speaks true. And I think that's why I was so drawn to your blog. And even just that idea in grief, it's funny because we almost feel guilty if we grieve about our life circumstance. Like, it's not okay that I've got some derived grief from my child, because we just don't want to pair that. But I think it was one of our Christmas episodes. We talked about the importance of letting grief process, of accepting it, of that being a healthy thing to do. So we're not bottling it up and just building resentment, because that's the counterpart to not processing the grief. Mm-hmm. So, having license to just feel, and that's okay. And again, to hear other parents say, me too, don't feel guilty for that, allows us to feel through the experience. And that's just part of it. And it's a healthy part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and two things come to mind. We name everything in this house, everything. When you have a kiddo like ours, you make the covert, the undercover, the nuanced overt, open and out loud. What you're talking about is unentitled grief. We feel it, my dog is very sick right now, and that has rocked our world. And you have this tendency to sort of stack it against all the other tragedies in the world in order to say, oh, I don't deserve this grief. I don't deserve it. And so when you say, okay, I'm experiencing what people would call unentitled grief, but it's mine, and I do deserve it. And the second thing people overlook is that feelings travel faster than our nervous system than language. We don't choose our feelings. You choose how you react to them, but you don't make a choice like, I'm going to feel angry, sad, anxious, bereft or frustrated. That comes to us faster than our language can process the experience. And so once you let go of that and go, well, I didn't choose to feel this way, then you can build what we in our house call the choice bubble, which is in between your feeling and your reaction. And when you have kiddos like ours, the idea is to fill that choice bubble with as many great things as you can. Take a walk, have a glass of water, read a book, jump in the garage, whatever. Make that, we're so visual in this house. You want your choice bubble should not be a golf ball. It should be a watermelon size, fill it with things that are your toolkit when you experience a sensation that's uncomfortable.
I love that. The choice bubble. That's going to be my new mantra, I think, for the rest of today.
We need more choice bubbles.
Choice bubbles. You know what else we did with kids that would be so great for your school? All the things I threw away, because I don't like to hang on to like a lot of clutter. With 5 kids, you can have a lot of clutter. We had this thermometer. It was an emotional thermometer is what we called it. We drew it out on like butcher paper, right? Big, long thermometer. And at the top was like emergency. You're in an ambulance. You're going to the hospital. And at the bottom was no big deal. And what happens is when your kids start to really spiral, you say, okay, I hear you don't want to do this worksheet. Can you go right on the emotional thermometer where that really falls in ambulance ride to no big deal? And it serves 2 things. Obviously, perspective, which everybody gains from. It's also an interruption from a spiral. They have to get up from where they're sitting or where they're standing or whatever and go choose a marker and write on that thermometer, where does this really fall? And whenever I did that with my kids, it was always a lot lower than their reaction demonstrated.
Right. That's interesting. I love that concept. We do a lot of parent trainings, and I'm going to throw out a term, and if the audience doesn't understand, it's okay. It's called polyvagal theory, and it's the idea that our nervous system has stages of regulation, and we have our safe zone, and then we get into our fight or flight, and then if it's too much, we're just in our shutdown. And there's strategies to kind of pull and transfer between all of them, but being able to self-identify is key. I love the visual because then they're becoming aware, and that's really the one of the blessings that's come out of our school is we do a lot of our supports right in class and group settings. And I've become this advocate against the one-on-one therapy sessions with kids for a number of reasons. And I know they have their time and their place, but they almost have this negative consequence of programming antisocial behavior where we're creating only a safe environment for our children with other adults. And I see that over and over again with parents on the spectrum. But when we have the opportunity to observe and become aware of things happening within us, because once we're dysregulated, we're not aware of anything. Somebody could pull us out and ask us, how did that happen? I don't know. I was not okay, and now I just am. There's no conscious awareness. But when you can watch it and start becoming aware and thinking through, oh, my body's also communicating. And it's not my head communicating, it's my body. That level of awareness is just such an important thing. I wished I had learned more when I was younger, and it's something I think that all children can benefit from learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
I love your. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it just again, I want to go back to your analogy, the thermometer. If I would ask my kids to clean their room, they would always say, "Go in the hospital, Dad."
Yes. They can be fools.
I'd rather go to the hospital than clean my room, Dad.
I'd rather go to the hospital.
But go ahead.
You just touched on something I feel passionate about too. Jack was in that one-on-one situation. We had no other, nothing was available to us beside that. And it absolutely created a social disconnect with peers. And I want to touch on something else that I think it created. He was always around adults. And what happened is we did not teach him the way we taught our other kids in terms of safety. And when Jack was 18, he doesn't live here anymore. He lives in a supported community. He has his own apartment right now. He has a lot of scaffolding, but he also has a fair amount of independence. And when he was about 19, he came to us and said, I want to date. I want to meet somebody. So I always say kids like Jack have what we call a duality. They have their emotional age and then they have their physical age. And Jack, I would put probably about 6 years behind his his physical age. So of course we were like, you're not ready to date. That's crazy. No. We're not doing that. Don't even try doing that. Well, Jack's body said differently. Jack's body was 19. And he went on a dating app and he wound up connecting with somebody in person. And it turned out to be 2 men who lured him into their car to take money out at an ATM. And it was a big deal. And by the way, it was my husband's biggest fear in sending him off. And it was a really, really difficult time for us. But looking back, it was a learning opportunity. And what we realized is exactly what you touched on, that he'd always been in the company of adults. So we didn't do what we did with our other kids. Hey, call me and say Bananarama, and I'll be there like that, no questions asked. Hey, you get to a party and you don't like what things look like? I have to call my dad. My stomach hurts. My brother's going to meet me later. Here's your list of escape hatches, escape routes. We didn't armor him with any of that. And so I'm really passionate about parents parenting both ages. You have to parent the physical age and the emotional age. And it's work. This is where the work is. But that is ultimately what will keep our kids safe.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, you touched on a question that I had. There's a lot of resources for kiddos when they're younger, new diagnosis for families, but not so many resources for teenagers. So apart from that advice, what additional resources have you found that could be helpful for parents with autistic kids that are at that teenage age period?
They're really, like, it all sort of evaporates. I always say that when Jack was first diagnosed, like, I wanted the old mom, the mom 5, 10, 15 years ahead of me to say, like, hey, this is puberty. This is what programs are available after high school. This is what to watch for. And, like, I am the old mom now because Jack's 21. And we're kind of building the ship while we swim alongside of it still. There are some dating apps that are geared for kids like Jack, for neurodiverse. There are a handful of programs that suit what Jack's needs were and were geographically close enough to us. I always cite my 2 biggest resources. I'm actually doing a workshop one later on tonight. We work with this parent coach, Shannon Earle, Earle. She works remotely with kids and parents, all about neuroscience, all about what anxiety does to us. She has been a game changer in terms of keeping Jack out of that fight or flight, or keeping me as a mom out of the catastrophizing space. This is the worst thing that's ever going to happen. We're never going to get back from this and all of that. I like to live in that space. It's very fun. And for anybody looking to help navigate high school, if you're in a traditional program that's not working, but you don't have a lot of options, and I'll send you all of this you can note it. There is a phenomenal educational coach, Jordan Burstein, who helps with kids as early as 8th grade, all the way to finding a program after high school. Because depending on the profile, and it sounds like your kiddos at the school probably are very similar to Jack's profile, I believe strongly in launching them. I talk to parents all the time, and I hear, oh, only I can do this. Oh, he'll really only eat the pizza that I make. He'll never take his medication if I don't, set out the bottles. And I'm really, determined to say, again, growth is disruptive. The truth is, depending on your profile, you're not meant to live with a young adult as a mom or a dad. They are meant to go and step out into their own life of purpose and joy, and we are meant to help them find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's such a scary space because you spend your whole upbringing protecting them, and then releasing them is like this. It's like this opposite instinct, right? Because everything about you says no, not yet, and we're hyper aware. It's almost like I'm aware of every problem in my home, but somebody else that visits says, hey, this is a beautiful home. It's same with our children. I'm aware of everything that could go wrong. And I think sometimes it paralyzes us. It puts us in that reactive state. Mm-hmm. And so having that healthy degree of, no, they can, and advocate, starting early, being able to push and really let them grow into who they can be. That's, I think, almost as much as it's a scary message, I think it's also a hopeful one. Well,
and we just had a guest last week, Care for the Caregivers, which I was thinking about, that sometimes parents or us, we, indirectly we set the bar too low to where the bar needs to be set higher. Like, I love the example of your husband saying, no, he's going to fill the car up with gas. He's going to go make the bank deposit today. I love that. So, well,
don't be fooled, because Joe's a big scaredy cat. And we say when Joe goes out into the world, he sees teeth instead of smiles. And that's not because he's a dentist.
That's like every guy sometimes.
It's every dad. When we bring Jack back to school, Joe's scanning. Like, he really goes deep. Yeah. But it's unavoidable that at some point our home, stopped being a learning environment. I had taken Jack as far as I could. We had calculated the tip on the same lunch menu, on the same cafe, for years. We had taken him as far as we could, and it was very difficult to let him go. He's 4 years in now, and I think for the first time in a long time, I could say he's really, really thriving. But yeah, it's a season of life that is hard to prepare for. And people ask me a lot, well, is there anything you did early on to get Jack ready to be on his own? And I tell parents it's not anything we did intentionally, but there's two things I'm so grateful we did do. When Jack was younger, we sent him with his brothers to a week-long YMCA camp where they just ran wild. It was run by like college kids, very low demand. But I knew he could sleep away from us. He could sleep out of the house. He could sleep at his grandparents. He could sleep at my sister's. The second thing is Jack's been on medication since he was 6 for anxiety. And around 12, we decided it was time for him to start learning how to manage it, telling us when he needs a refill. I knew he could do it safely. He could administer it to himself at night. And then once he got into this program, we set up the doctor portal so he interacts with the portal now. So all these little, I always say it's inch stones, not milestones, but all of these things propel you forward.
Yeah, and maybe it's not on the traditional timeline of, hey, 18, you move on. Maybe it is 22 or 26 or 31 or whatever, but consistent progress and allowing yourself that time to acknowledge the little wins is huge.
Yeah.
I'm going to circle way back here for a second, back to your blog, because, and maybe this is the attorney in me. I'm sorry, Brad. But
recovery attorney.
Are you in a program?
This is my program. This is
Step 2.
I have to ask on your blog
Start a
because
school.
I don't
Sorry,
know.
I
don't know what I was thinking. Start a podcast.
That's step 3.
I just am curious because the nature of that blog, Carrie, you don't seem like the person that just had this goal. Okay, I'm going to create this life resource, and someday 160,000 people are going to have access to it, and so I'm going to write for them. It's like you're writing for you, and I probably need to do better myself, but chronicling or just the idea of journaling, forget about what it's done for others. How has that helped you as a mom in the journey?
Oh, it's tremendous.
Take away that other people read it, but tell me about just that process for you.
And truth be told, I forget other people read it. I mean, in a way, I don't.
That was my hope. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very much, I love writing. I love writing and I love reading. So that's always been something that's lit me up inside. It's very cathartic, especially when Jack was younger. After they finally all went to bed, I would sit at my desk and just sort of make sense of the day through what I could write. A big part of my journaling experience is actually non-autism related. My closest friend I've been married 27 years, so my closest friend of 30 years, and we haven't lived in the same city in 29 years. We email each other every single day. Monday through Friday, every day. And I'll be like, and then Brad made a joke about recovering attorneys, and then we had chicken, every nuance aspect of my day. And I would say those emails are how I learned to write, how I learned to tell a story with what I call using essential language. As I grew as a writer over time, my writing definitely changed and it sort of became more. When I write blog posts, it's like being a surgeon. How many words can I snip out of here and still get my point across, which is much different than chapter writing. And I do like to sort of flip back and forth between the two.
Gotcha. I love it. I like that you said it's cathartic. There's something, at least for I'm going to step into the dad role because I think the autism dad experience is different than the mom side. There's just a different connection. We process different. We approach it differently. Men are programmed to think of how can I solve the problems. And autism is not solvable. And it's what I tell my our listeners all the time. If I could go back to early me, it would be this is not a problem to solve. This is a child to love. This is one to discover. It's not something to fix. But there's a real struggle there that I see on the dads that I meet where they're trying to fix it. And journaling It's something I've only started more recently doing just in my regular experience. And for the guys out there that are, I'm going to say, emotionally constipated, it gives you an outlet to process and to let it not just be bottled. So I just applaud you for doing it and for kind of setting an example. And if anyone out there is looking for a model of just an idea, what does that even look like? I would point them to your blog and just say, just go look and see what a day of letting emotion process is. And I think it's super healthy for those of us that get stuck and have those frustrating and hard days, and just know that it's okay and it's normal, and tomorrow is a new day, and you don't have to carry baggage from yesterday into tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, and again, men, we're not as emotional. We hide our emotions in our muscles. So, you know what I mean?
Is that where my husband's emotions are?
They're all in the muscles, man. They're all in the muscles. But no, but it was, Nathan, you bring up a good point. We've talked to a lot of professionals, and we hear this constant thing of autism is a journey. We talk about play with your children to see how to have these connections with your children. Seems really simple. Like I said, we don't want to fix it. We're not trying to fix it, but this is a journey. It's a process. And that's where journaling is so helpful. So it's awesome. Love it.
And circling back to grief, I read about in the book that in our experience, a mother's grief is loud. It kind of steals all the air out of the room. It's colorful. It's in motion. A father's grief is like an after hours kind of private affair. I remember Joe would wait, we'd all go up to bed and he would still be on the couch. And I would know that's when he was like ruminating about the day. And I, not to be too sort of like, categorizing things, but I do think in our house anyway, the fathers bear sort of a little bit of a different burden. In our house, Joe knows he needs to make sure this boy is provided for. I am a writer. I will never have the means to make sure this boy is provided for, but Joe carries that responsibility really deeply.
Mm-hmm. Well, because you always want to protect your children. You always want to protect your family. You are the hunter. You are the protector, and yeah,
and I'm allowing even that grief to settle in, Carrie, because as a provider, right, I want to equip my children for the world, and it is frustrating as a dad to think that one of my children is not quite as equipped as the others. I could go down that rabbit hole for a while, but I think the message is to contemplate and to let it process, and to not beat yourself up for it. Yeah. That's an okay thing to grieve and to feel a little sorrow about, but to feel that, not hold it in, right? And just know that there are other dads out there with the same concern, and that doesn't mean that your child is any more or less capable, or that you're any less of a father than anybody else. Let it process, let it feel. Otherwise, it just, again, it bottles up, and at some point, unprocessed grief does become resentment. And so if you're trying to have more joy in the journey, let it out as it comes and allow the experiences to process the way they should. And it's autism really can be a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. For every frustration I have with my son, I can draw a counter story where it has allowed me to be a dad in a more intentional way, in a more deliberate way. And if anything, that's just made the rest of my parenting experience that much better and more elevated. So appreciate you, Carrie, and the messages that you bring. And really just, again, that real vibe. Again, with so much content that's out there, I love that there are real moms and real dads that are sharing their vision and giving us glimpses of hope of what hopefully our kids can experience one day too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and Carrie, thank you so much for your time, and we hope to have you back when your new book comes out.
Yes.
I can't wait to read it, and I'm excited for it, just as a father and as a husband too. How to work. Well,
we're in the midst of titling it. Joe, husband, thinks it should be called Marriage. I Love You for Now.
All right, what's your working title? Now I'm curious.
My working title is Marriage, the Things No One Talks About. So I'm really
I'd love to have Joe on the podcast. I like this guy. I don't know your husband, but I already really like him a lot. We would hang out very well.
He'd be here for hours.
It almost sounds like there's a blend of Marriage, You're Not What I Expected.
Yeah, a lot of it. You can go in a lot of different directions.
Cool. Well, whatever it is, I look forward to seeing the announcement on it. So
yeah, please keep us informed. And we're going to share all of your resources, everything you have on the podcast. So those who are listening, we'll share all that information. As we wrap up, Carrie, what would be some last-minute advice or some advice that you would want to share with our parents?
Well, the thing that always comes to mind is something you touched on earlier, is that, I'm ahead of a lot of people in this game and in this journey, and I just hope people can do the things I wished I did, which is I was often so focused on progress, so focused on nudging this boy forward and social storying the heck out of him and making sure he learned new things every day. Looking back, I just wished I had split a cookie with him before dinner or smelled his head after a bath or got right down on the floor and traced those blocks together the way that he used to do, because I really believe that that's as important a part of parenting a kiddo like Jack as any therapies or social stories can be.
Wow, it's wonderful.
Love it. I think I'm going to go home and play with my kid.
I know, that's every time. Yes, thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much for your time. Nathan, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making us part of your day. Please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation that inspires connection. I want to say thank you to our producer, Jesse Palmer, and our wonderful marketing director, Dallin Davis. Until next time, let's do some good.